Stoker is one of the most disappointing movies I have seen in my entire life. It's not painful to sit through, it's not one of the worst films of all time, maybe not even of the year that it came out, but it still manages to be one of the most disappointing experiences I've ever had while watching a movie. How can that be? Well, let's put it this way. When you're about to watch a movie made by, say, Michael Bay, Adam Sandler, or George Lucas, or Zack Snyder, you can expect it to be consistent in many things. Consistently unfunny, consistently annoying, consistently stupid, consistently sterile of creativity, or just consistently boring. When you watch a film famous for being unintentionally funny, you can expect to laugh at how poorly made that movie is. That is why when you're just about to watch a movie made by one of the best directors of an entire country, one of the best of all times, and one of the best directors period, you expect at least a competent film, with decent and solid elements behind it. The movie in question, Stoker, is directed by South Korean director Park Chan-Wook, whose films don't stop impressing me. He can make a great drama with commentary on North and South Korean problems and how political conflict divides people and makes human beings suffer. He can make a very good and bizarre romantic comedy with charming, likable, interesting characters and a surreal element to it. Quite possibly one of the best trilogies of all time, and of course all of his movies have a very long set scene. Except for GSA. The point is, Chan-Wook is a brilliant director. You might call him a visionary. His movies are not something you just watch and forget the next day. They leave a lasting impression in you. The level of dedication he gives to his characters automatically makes you care for the outcome of their stories, and the emotional impact they deliver is nothing but impressive. Sometimes the emotional level is so deep that the whole experience adopts a feeling of psychological horror. So, after experiencing the best he has to offer, which is everything he has made in South Korea, I was looking forward to behold his approach to an Occidental production filled with popular actors, and the result was unimpressive, to say the least. But before I explain why I consider this a bad movie overall, I will mention the redeemable factors in it. First off, as I mentioned before, Chan-Wook does a great job establishing the tone of the film, which is that of a psychological thriller.
Accident is so strange. Have you heard all the news?
The opening of the movie is actually very well done. It is investing, interesting, and establishes the tone of the movie. Or at least the tone it should have. The first 5 minutes of the movie are the best part of the entire thing, because you have yet to realize how bad the remaining 90 minutes are. Then there is the cinematography, which is too good for a movie like this. Chung Hoon Chung, hopefully I spelled it properly, was in charge of the cinematography, and it shows. He was also the genius behind the cinematography of almost every single Park Chan-Wook movie, after Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. And you can tell, JSA and Mr. Vengeance have very competent cinematography, but Old Boy took it to a different level. And from then on, they keep working together to make the film experience better and better. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is for any movie to have good cinematography. I honestly think he's one of the best cinematography artists in the entire world. His work makes the storytelling rather rich, and interesting and memorable. Stoker also has his handprints all over it. The movie looks absolutely beautiful from beginning to end. The shot composition is filled with interesting angles, and the usage of light during mysterious and suspenseful scenes is impressive. It creates an atmosphere to it. He made such a good job that The movie honestly does not deserve it. So Chan-Wook and Chung-hoon are like Atlas. Not this Atlas, this Atlas. They carry the movie/world over their shoulders. And if it weren't for them, it will be much worse. The problem is, the world/movie is too heavy. They cannot move it, they cannot improve it. Because the problems it has overshadow everything else. And that being said, please, let me explain why nothing else in this movie works. Would you kindly? The story is fairly simple. A young girl, after her 18th birthday, suffers the death of her father. Her mysterious uncle decides to stay at her house to support her and her mother. And during his stay, horrible things begin to happen. And she, then, begins to suspect her uncle might not be who he seems to be. If you are a classic movie fan, you already know that it is basically a poor imitation of Alfred Hitchcock's Shadow of a Doubt, but without mystery, or suspense, or good writing. So, after 15 minutes into the movie, I realized that it was going to be a bad movie, and after 5 more minutes, I noticed where all the problems were coming from, and that is of course the script. Master director Akira Kurosawa said once on the importance of the script, with a good script, a good director can produce a masterpiece. With the same script, a mediocre director can produce a passable film, but with a bad script, even a good director can't possibly make a good film. The script is the story on paper, everything that will happen is there, and the things that the actors are supposed to say are determined by it. That's why this movie is bad. Nothing in the script works. Turns out, Chan-Wook had nothing to do with the script, or the writing of the movie. Then,
who is responsible for this?
Wentworth Miller. You know him? He's an actor known for timeless classics such as Underworld, Resident Evil Afterlife, The Loft, and an overrated, overlong TV show. Let's see just how bad his writing is. First off, the title of the movie is supposed to reference the name of the family. I assume he took it from Bram Stoker, famous author of Dracula. And the name of the protagonist? India Stoker. Why amateur writers tend to give stupid names to their characters? Bella Swan, Alicia Steele, Cypher Rage, Jupiter Jones, and India Stoker. From the very first shot the uncle, played by Matthew Good, is introduced, it becomes obvious that he's an insane person or a homicidal maniac. Or both. And once you know this, the mystery in the movie is gone. Then they establish just how good India and her father were at hunting. So it won't come out of nowhere later. And then Wentworth Miller tries to make the uncle sound clever and impotent.
Do you want to know why you feel at a disadvantage right now?
Because I didn't know you existed until today?
Because you're standing below me.
And in the next morning, this happens.
This really is a beautiful garden.
Wait, if he's outside and she's in the second floor of the house, how come his voice sounds as if he was right next to her? Especially if the scene is shot to make it look like you are standing behind the window. By now you should have noticed that our main actress has the exact same expression through the entire film. That's because the actress playing her, Mia Wasikowska, is a terrible actress. She has the same constipation face in every scene.
emotional or not. And it's not the face the director told her to show. She acts like a plank of wood in every movie she's in. You could exchange her faces with all her other roles and you would not notice a damn difference. I know her character is supposed to be a silent, angsty teenager, but she's not convincing. Being a silent character does not mean you should be wooden. In fact, silent characters are very hard to play. Because when an actor cannot use the voice as a medium to emit emotion, he has to rely on corporal language. And in order to do that, you must be a very good emotional actor to make your performance convincing. Take the man with no name for example. He barely speaks, yet he has a great presence. Clint Eastwood knew that by making his movements slow and delicate, he will give the sensation that his character could do something unpredictable in any second that will impress the audience. Jeremy Bullock understood this very well, and that's why he used it as a guide for his performance of Boba Fett. Let's use a more fitting example. Noomi Rapace as Lisbeth Salander. So Lisbeth is a mean, rude, unmannered, and selfish person at first sight. But as you keep watching her interact with other people, you realize that she seems desperate to repel people, as if she was actually afraid of the harm and emotional damage that others may inflict upon her. And as a consequence, she's simply not good at interacting with other individuals. And you can understand that just for her body language and her expressions and actions. Wasikowska just stands there with a shovel face trying to react to things. If you are not capable of emitting emotion with your face, your body language, or the way you speak, you are not convincing as an actor. There are signs that indicate she has a grudge against her mother because she had a bad relationship with her father, but of course the script never bothers to explain such things, or portray them in a convincing way, because the writer doesn't have the time or the talent to make a convincing human relationship. I also shouldn't neglect mentioning Nicole Kidman is in this movie. She plays of course the mother, and despite being a good actress, she's given the most cookie-cutter dialogue in the entire movie, and therefore her line delivery is just bad.
Why don't we get out of here? Go shopping, we can get some ice cream. She hates to be touched. I'm her mother. What a curse, Come and say hello to your Uncle Charlie. Make this well yourself, you lazy thing. Where's Mrs. McGarrett?
She's still not here.
What? What are we supposed to do? I'm not much in the kitchen.
That was fucking awful. Anyway, shortly after, it becomes really obvious the character of Uncle Charlie is a Gary Stu kind of character. Now, what the hell is that? Well, to put it simply, is a poorly written character by an amateur writer that is built to be the focus of the story that overshadows everything else and is often unrealistically idealized to be the perfect character, in this case antagonist, despite the character traits being nonsensical and exaggerated. According to this wiki, right here, just look at the character. He wears casual clothing in his brother's funeral and seduces India's mom despite the fact her husband's corpse was just buried. He can cook like a professional. He drives a fancy sports car. The schoolgirls squeal when he passes by. He seduces India herself, of which I will talk about more later, and even beats up bullies. Did I mention there are bullies in this movie? There are bullies in this movie.
My eyes are penetrating the inside of you. Hey.
I hate when a movie just pulls out a bully as a plot device. They include them to either give the main characters a reason to be angsty or an excuse to beat someone up later in revenge. And the movies that use them effectively are very rare. Stoker goes the easy road and not only gives the bullies a predictable reason to be in the movie, but also uses terrible actors to play them. Also notice the dialogue is especially bad.
You know what happens to little girls who mess with me?
And then fucking Jacob shows up and saves her from the bullies. Think about it. We have useless parents, a Gary Stu character that the protagonist is attracted to, a plank of wood, poorly written relationships, and a female lead that needs constant saving. How the hell does a 42-year-old man write something that is one step away from ripping off Twilight? And it's ironic because Chan-Wook already made a movie with vampires that fall in love, which is actually good. And this is why I blame Wentworth Miller for the film's mediocrity. Then it is revealed that Uncle Charlie is a murderer, and that he killed both the housekeeper and the old lady that was arguing with him before, to get them out of the way. Wait, if India just discovered the body, why doesn't she call the police? There is a dead body in the ice box, which, by the way, is the same place the meat you were eating before was. Why did Charlie hit the corpse there, where it can be easily discovered? Well, turns out that this may or may not be a hallucination or fantasy that India is having. The film does this quite often, and it gets annoying, not because it's mysterious, but because they reveal what actually happened in a matter of minutes. So it's pointless. And it makes you realize that the writer doesn't know how to build mystery or suspense, and uses this as a device to distract you from the plot holes. Hallucinations and dream sequences are often used by the screenwriter when he writes himself into a corner, and is too lazy to start writing the scene from the beginning. It's like the thriller or mystery equivalent of the jump scare from the horror genre. It starts, it ends, and then you realize it was just a big waste of time, especially if they do it often.
See? Yeah, there's no spirit. There's no spirit. Ellie!
Hallucination scenes should have a purpose. They can establish that a certain character has received psychological damage and is mentally unstable or at the verge of insanity. Or they can be a storytelling element that makes you realize the perception of our main character is dysfunctional. And that builds suspense, because you don't know how much of what he sees is real. Sometimes that is the main focus of the story. Anyway, later on, India goes to see Jacob and kisses him.
So, you wanna go inside? Then where would you like to go?
Because apparently being saved from the bullies before made her fall in love automatically. That's some great writing right there. But then Jacob tries to rape her.
No, you don't. You open this door, and now you're gonna walk through it.
Wait, that's completely out of character. It's alright though, because Uncle Charlie comes out of nowhere to save the day, making you realize again the entire soft plot of Jacob and the bullies was just there to give Uncle Charlie a chance to save India from someone. By the way, Charlie really seems to like belts. He uses them to immobilize people and strangle his victims. Maybe your writer thought using a specific object as a weapon will be more memorable.
Oh man, this writing is magnificent.
Then India literally masturbates in the shower while fantasizing about her uncle killing Jacob. This basically means that Charlie has succeeded into making her feel sexually attracted to him. And is by far the best part of the movie, because it's the most convincing acting I have ever seen from Wasikowska. But this is where I have to say that by far, Charlie is the worst part of the movie. He's the story element that keeps the plot moving forward, because he's supposed to seduce both the cookie-cutter mom and India, which is unbelievable, because his performance and dialogue are not effective enough to convince you that he's capable of doing that. Later on, it is revealed that Charlie killed his baby brother when he was a kid, passed his whole life in a mental institution, and when he was finally released, India's father tried to send him away to protect India from him.
Why aren't we going to your place? I'm not gonna see India.
Here are the keys. I think you'll see that I've taken care of all the details.
Why are you doing this to me?
Do I really have to tell you something you already know?
Why can't I go?
Charlie.
Why not?
And to avoid that, Charlie kills him.
Of course I still love you, Richard. I just have to love you a little bit less now.
Because apparently he is obsessed with her. That is the twist. But it doesn't add anything to the story, because we already knew he has an interest for incest when we saw him seducing his sister-in-law. And we already know that he's a psychopath with ulterior motives, because we saw him killing other people already. And even worse, India doesn't even seem to care that he killed her father. She responds with an indifferent face. The revelation has no emotional impact whatsoever. I look at this character and all I can think of is how much better the character of Matt Cady in the Cape Fear remake is. In that movie, Robert De Niro and Martin Scorsese worked together to craft the most efficient antagonist that they possibly could, to brilliant results. Matt Cady is an overly religious, southern white man, so you can see he has his own version of justice and doesn't care for anyone else's. Robert De Niro went through a full body transformation to make his character as intimidating as possible. Mads passed over a decade in prison thinking about nothing but revenge, so his motivation is perfectly clear. It's in fact the main point of the film.
I learned that in prison, you white trash piece of shit.
He passes through constant hazards and hardships without ever giving up, to show you he's willing to endure anything to get his revenge. And on top of that, there are many humorous scenes involving him, to make him more charismatic, so when he seduces the protagonist's daughter, the scenes are actually disturbing. Because you know, the character is perfectly capable of doing something like that and succeeding. But of course I'm not saying that every antagonist in every thriller has to be like Matt Cady. But when you have a character like that in a movie, you should make him as convincing and effective as possible. Because the actions of a character like that are what directly influence the flow of the story. Now Matthew Good is a decent actor, but he's not Robert De Niro, or any other kind of leading man. He can play a realistic support character very well, but he's completely miscast in this movie, and he tries too hard to make his dialogue work. But he cannot, because the brilliant script by Wentworth Miller gave him nothing to work with. And I keep bringing this up, but it's all over the place. And now we are automatically stuck, because the important moments in the movie are nor convincing nor investing, and the character motivations don't make sense.
But not me. Personally speaking, I can't wait to watch life tear you apart.
Why will she say that? Because the uncle chose India and not her? Shouldn't she be insulting Charlie for seducing her daughter instead? And it's unfortunate because Kidman is clearly trying her best in that scene. And of course Wasikowska also tries her best at showing you how bad it feels to have your own mother wish you a terrible fate. And trying not falling asleep in the process. You know, acting is hard. Why would you try? It's not like it's your job or anything. Why the fuck would you try to act?
God fucking damn it.
Anyway, Charlie tries to also strangle Nicole Kidman, again with his fancy belt, to get her out of the way as well. But then, India shoots him in the face because all of a sudden she doesn't like him anymore. Later, she stabs the sheriff that was investigating the disappearance of Charlie's victims, possibly to silence him. But this doesn't make any sense either, because she could have called the police and tell them that she killed Charlie in self-defense. Then she also shoots the sheriff dead, because apparently she is now a dangerous person and a cold-blooded murderer. How intimidating. And then the movie ends with a terrible song that doesn't fit the tone of the rest of the movie, which is a shame because the score was one of the few decent factors of the film until now. I don't know how much blame I can put on Park Chan-Wook. Even if he accepted to direct the movie, he had nothing to do with the screenplay and probably had no creative control, since he's a director of foreign movies. But like I said before, the cinematography and his direction are the best parts of the entire film. There is even a symbolic scene in which a spider climbs towards India's genitals, symbolizing how she's being seduced and tempted by a horrible being. And after killing Charlie, the spider goes away, because she has rejected the temptation. I think that was his idea, not just because it's the kind of symbolism he uses, but also because it resembles the hallucination scene with the ants that Odesu has in Old Boy, which represents his desire to see the outside world and be part of society again. Also, quite frankly, I don't think Wentworth Miller has the creativity to write something like that. But in the end, Stoker is just a plain waste of time. If you still believe Wentworth Miller is a good writer, maybe you should check out his only other adapted screenplay, which was for The Disappointments Room, one of the worst movies of 2016. So please do yourself a favor and watch any of the other movies in Chan-Wook's filmography. Even the best directors of all time made mediocre movies at some point of their careers. And to end in a happy note, Chan-Wook already redeemed himself in 2016 with a great film. If Stoker somehow impressed you, his other movies are most likely to traumatize you for life. And that is not an exaggeration.